I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Patricia, listening to her soft breathing and watching the ceiling fan turn slow circles in the darkness. My father's house, my childhood home, creaked and settled around us the way old houses do, each sound a memory. The floorboard outside the bathroom that always groaned. The window in the kitchen that rattled when the wind came off the marsh. 89 years of life compressed into wood and nails, and the smell of Old Spice that still lingered in his bedroom down the hall. Cassandra was asleep in the guest room, or maybe she was still texting Whitney, planning her windfall spending spree. The thought made my chest tight. I'm not a complicated man. I grew up in Savannah, went to Armstrong State, taught high school history for 38 years at Jenkins High. I married Patricia when I was 23, and we raised Cassandra in a 3-bedroom ranch off Abercorn Street. We went to First Baptist every Sunday, said Grace before meals, and believed that if you worked hard and lived right, things would turn out okay. My father taught me that. He built staircases and decks with his hands, came home with sawdust in his hair, and never once complained about the work. But somewhere along the way, Cassandra had learned different lessons. The sun came up over the live oaks, filtering through Spanish moss. I made coffee in my father's kitchen, my kitchen, and stood at the window watching mourning doves pick at seed beneath the feeder. Patricia came down at 6:30, her eyes still swollen. "You didn't sleep?" she said. It wasn't a question. No. She poured herself coffee, added cream the way she's done for 43 years. "What are you going to do about Cassandra?" I'd told her what I'd heard last night. Patricia had cried again, but not with surprise, just sadness, the kind of sadness that comes from watching someone you love make the same mistakes over and over. "I don't know yet," I said. "Your father wanted her to have that house." "My father wanted her to have a future. There's a difference." Cassandra appeared around 8, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her highlighted hair pulled into a messy bun. She'd inherited her mother's delicate features and my father's stubbornness, a dangerous combination. She poured coffee and scrolled through her phone, barely looking up. "Morning, baby," Patricia said gently. "Morning," Cassandra yawned. "What time is the lawyer thing?" 10 o'clock, I said. "Evan Morrison's office downtown." She nodded, still looking at her phone. "Cool. Is there anything good for breakfast? I'm starving." Patricia made scrambled eggs and toast while I showered and dressed. The lawyer meeting was standard procedure, reading the will, distributing assets, signing papers. My father hadn't been a wealthy man, but he'd been careful. The beach house was the major asset. There was also about $40,000 in savings, his truck, and the tools in his workshop. Small things, meaningful things. I'd made my decision sometime around 4 in the morning, watching the darkness thin to gray. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, but sometimes love looks like letting someone fall so they can learn to stand up on their own. Evan Morrison's office was in one of those renovated cotton warehouses on River Street, all exposed brick and modern furniture that didn't quite match the building's history. Evan had handled my father's affairs for 20 years. Estate planning, property transfers, the usual small-town legal work. He was maybe 50, with graying hair and reading glasses he wore on a chain around his neck. "Douglas, Patricia," he said, shaking our hands. "Cassandra, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man." "Thank you, Evan." We sat in leather chairs around a conference table. Evan opened a folder and began reading in that formal lawyer voice, all the whereases and heretofores that make legal documents sound like a foreign language. Patricia held my hand. Cassandra sat forward, alert now, phone face down on the table. The savings would be split between Patricia and me for household expenses. The truck went to Scott Wheeler, my father's fishing buddy for 30 years. The tools to the vocational program at Jenkins High, where he'd sometimes volunteered teaching kids carpentry. Small bequests to First Baptist and the Humane Society. Then Evan paused and looked at Cassandra. "And to my granddaughter, Cassandra Michelle Patterson, I leave my property at 412 Solomon Avenue, Tybee Island, Georgia, including the house, all furnishings, and the land upon which it sits, to have and to hold in perpetuity." Cassandra's face lit up. I saw the calculations happening behind her eyes, the money, the freedom, the escape from whatever mess her life had become this month. "However," Evan continued, and I felt Patricia's hand tighten on mine. "However," Cassandra said, Evan looked at me, confused. I'm sorry, Douglas, but there's nothing else here about conditions or... I need to speak with you privately, Evan, I said, just for a moment. The look on Cassandra's face shifted from excitement to suspicion. What's going on? Just paperwork, honey, Patricia said softly. Nothing to worry about. I followed Evan into his private office. He closed the door and turned to me with raised eyebrows. Douglas, what's this about? The will is clear. I can't just... The property is currently in my father's estate, correct? Yes, until we process the transfer. And as executor, I have some discretion in how assets are distributed? Evan sat down slowly. Within the bounds of the will's instructions, yes. But Douglas, your father specifically named Cassandra for that property. If you're thinking of contesting or redirecting... I'm not contesting anything, I said, but I need to understand my options. If Cassandra were to refuse the bequest, what happens? Refuse it? Why would she... He stopped, studying my face. What happened? I told him, not everything, but enough. The conversation I'd overheard, the pattern of irresponsibility, the certainty that she'd sell the property within a month and burn through the money within a year. Evan took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Lord have mercy. My father built that house with his own hands, I said quietly. In 1967, he and my mother spent every weekend for 2 years working on it. She died there, Evan. Heart attack on the back porch watching the sunrise. That house isn't just real estate, it's sacred ground. I understand, but legally, what if the bequest came with conditions? Your father didn't put any conditions in the will. But could I? As executor, acting in the estate's best interest, and in the spirit of what my father would have wanted if he'd known the full situation? Evan was quiet for a long moment. Outside I could hear the muffled sounds of River Street. Tourists, carriages, the distant horn of a container ship. Finally he said, you could propose a modified distribution to Cassandra. If she agrees and signs off, it becomes legally binding. But if she refuses and insists on the original terms, a court would likely side with her. The will is clear. What kind of modifications are we talking about? A trust, for example. The property held in trust with specific conditions for her to meet before taking full ownership. Or a life estate where she could use the property but not sell it. Or, he paused, or you could exercise your discretion to find her in violation of reasonable expectations and redirect the asset to another beneficiary, arguing that circumstances have materially changed since the will was drafted. But that's risky. She could sue, and it would be ugly. My heart was pounding. What if she were to disclaim the inheritance entirely, voluntarily? Then it would pass according to the residuary clause, which in this case means it would go to you and Patricia as the primary heirs. But Douglas, she's not going to voluntarily give up $500,000. She might, I said slowly, if she doesn't know what she's giving up. Evan's eyes widened. I can't be party to deception. Not deception, just information management. What if I told her there were significant problems with the property? Code violations, structural issues, environmental concerns? Nothing false, just emphasizing the difficulties? Is any of that true? I thought about the house. The foundation had settled over 50 years. The wiring was old. The septic system probably didn't meet current regulations. Nothing dangerous, but nothing a building inspector would love either. Some of it, I admitted. Evan stood and walked to the window. Douglas, I've known you for 30 years. You're one of the most honest men I've ever met. What you're describing goes against everything I know about your character. I'm not trying to cheat her, I said. I'm trying to save her. There's a difference. Is there? The question hung in the air between us. Outside the door, Cassandra was waiting, probably refreshing Zillow on her phone, already mentally spending money she didn't have yet. And I was in here, plotting and scheming, like some kind of manipulative father from a bad television drama. But was it manipulation to protect someone from their own worst instincts? Was it wrong to let natural consequences teach the lessons that love and patience hadn't? Give me another option, I said. A better one, please. Evan turned from the window. Talk to her. Be honest. Tell her what you heard and why you're concerned. Give her a chance to prove you wrong. And if she doesn't, if she promises to keep it and then sells it anyway, then at least you'll know you tried the right way first. He was right. Of course he was right. But I'd been trying the right way with Cassandra for 34 years, and where had it gotten us? 2 divorces, 3 failed business ventures, and a daughter who saw her grandfather's death as a lottery win. We walked back to the conference room. Patricia looked at me with question in her eyes. Cassandra was typing on her phone, smiling at something. "Everything okay?" Patricia asked. "Fine," I said. "Just clarifying some details." Evan sat down and gathered his papers. "Cassandra, I need to explain something about the Tybee property. There are some complications." Her smile faded. "What kind of complications?" "The house is quite old, and there may be some significant maintenance issues that need to be addressed before any sale or transfer. Your grandfather hadn't updated many systems in decades. We're talking potentially $30,000–$40,000 in immediate repairs just to bring it up to code for a sale." This was true, technically, maybe even conservative. Cassandra's face fell. "Are you serious?" "I'm afraid so. And there's the question of environmental assessment for the septic system. Possible wetland restrictions and—" "Wait," she interrupted. "How much is this place actually worth if it's got all these problems?" Evan glanced at me. I kept my face neutral. "That's hard to say. Market value on paper might be $400–$450,000, but with the repair costs, inspection issues, and the soft real estate market for older properties," he trailed off meaningfully. I watched my daughter's mind work, the excitement draining away, the calculations adjusting. This wasn't the windfall she'd imagined. "So what are you saying?" she asked. "That I'm inheriting a money pit?" "I'm saying it's complicated," Evan said carefully. "You'd need to decide whether to invest in renovations and hold it or sell as is for significantly less, or what?" This was the moment, the cliff edge. I could step back now, tell the truth, hand her the keys and let her make her own mistakes. Or I could push forward into territory that felt dark and unfamiliar. "Or," I said quietly, "you could disclaim the inheritance. If the property is more burden than benefit, you have the right to refuse it. The asset would revert to the estate, and you'd be free of the responsibility." Cassandra looked at me sharply. "And then what happens to it? It would come to your mother and me as residuary heirs. We'd deal with the repairs and complications." "And you'd sell it?" "Probably not," I said truthfully. "Your grandmother died in that house. It means something to us." She sat back, arms crossed, thinking. I could see the war happening behind her eyes. The money she'd wanted versus the hassle she hadn't expected. Whitney's voice probably echoing in her head. "Is it even worth it, girl?" Finally, she said, "I need to see it first. Before I decide anything, I want to see the actual house." My stomach dropped. "Of course," Evan said. "That's completely reasonable. Douglas, when could you take her out there?" Patricia squeezed my hand under the table, hard. "This weekend," I heard myself say. "We could drive out Saturday morning." Cassandra nodded slowly. "Okay. Yeah, I need to see what we're actually talking about here." The meeting ended shortly after. Papers were signed for the accounts and other assets. The beach house transfer was tabled, pending Cassandra's inspection and decision. We walked out into the bright Savannah morning, tourists crowding the candy shops and praline stands along River Street. "I'm going back to Atlanta tonight," Cassandra said, already on her phone ordering an Uber. "But I'll come back Saturday. Text me what time." She hugged Patricia, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and was gone, climbing into a Toyota Camry with Chatham County plates. Patricia and I stood on the cobblestones, watching her drive away. "What have you done?" Patricia whispered. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But Saturday's going to tell us everything." We drove home in silence, and I spent the afternoon in my father's workshop, running my hands over tools he'd used for 60 years. The miter saw he'd taught me on. The level that hung perfectly straight on its nail. The workbench scarred with decades of careful cuts. On Saturday, I'd take Cassandra to Tybee Island. She'd see the house, the real house, not the money pit I'd described. She'd see the porch, where her grandmother had died holding my father's hand. She'd see the bedroom where I'd spent childhood summers. She'd see the pier my father built, the garden her grandmother planted, the shells we'd collected together when she was small. And then I'd have to decide, would I let the lie stand? Or would I finally tell my daughter the truth she needed to hear, even if it cost me everything? My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Douglas, I hope you know what you're doing. Call me if you need to talk." I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew that love sometimes looks like saying no, and that my father had taught me a man's character is tested not in the easy moments, but in the impossible ones. Saturday was 3 days away. Thursday evening, I drove out to Tybee Island alone. I told Patricia I needed to check on the house. make sure everything was secure before bringing Cassandra on Saturday. She nodded, but her eyes said she knew I was really going to wrestle with my conscience in private. 43 years of marriage means you can't hide much. The drive from Savannah takes about 30 minutes, Highway 80 cutting through marshland and over the Bull River Bridge. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. I'd driven this route 1,000 times, as a boy in my father's truck, as a young man bringing Patricia to meet my parents, as a father with Cassandra asleep in her car seat. The house sat 2 blocks from the beach on a quiet street lined with palmetto palms. A modest cottage with weathered blue siding, white trim that needed painting, and a screened porch that wrapped around the front. The yard was overgrown. My father hadn't been able to keep up with it the last few years. But the azaleas my mother planted in 1970 still bloomed pink every spring. I sat in the driveway for a long time, just looking. This was the place where I'd learned to swim, where my mother had taught me to identify shells, whelks and sand dollars and angel wings, where my father had shown me how to cast a fishing line from the pier at sunset, where I'd proposed to Patricia on the beach under a full moon in 1981, where Cassandra, age 6, had caught her first fish and cried because she felt bad for it. The house held 57 years of memories in its bones. I unlocked the front door. The smell hit me immediately. Salt air, old wood, my father's old spice, and something else. Something indefinable that was just family. The furniture was dated but sturdy, built by my father's hands. Photos on the walls. My parents' wedding in 1958, me in my high school graduation cap, Cassandra as a baby, Patricia laughing in a sundress. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen with its Formica countertops and ancient refrigerator covered in magnets from places we'd visited. The bathroom with the pink tile my mother had insisted on. The master bedroom where my father had held her hand as her heart gave out, whispering "I love you" over and over until the paramedics arrived. In the back bedroom, my childhood room, I found the old twin bed I'd slept in during summer vacations. The closet still held board games, fishing rods, a deflated football. On the dresser sat a framed photo, me and my father, maybe 1975, both of us sunburned and grinning, holding up a string of red drum. I sat on the bed and put my head in my hands. What was I doing? Evan was right. This went against everything I believed in, everything I'd taught my students for 38 years. Honesty, integrity, doing the right thing even when it's hard. I'd stood in front of teenagers and talked about character, about how the easy path is rarely the right path, about how lying, even for good reasons, corrupts the soul. And here I was, plotting to deceive my own daughter. But what was the alternative? Hand her the keys and watch her sell our family's history for bottle service in Miami? Enable her self-destruction with $500,000? My father would roll over in his fresh grave. I thought about the biblical story of the prodigal son. The father in that parable didn't chase after his boy, didn't stop him from making terrible choices. He let him go, let him fail, let him hit bottom. And when the son finally came home broken and repentant, the father welcomed him with open arms. But that father didn't hand his son more money to waste. He celebrated his return, but the inheritance was already spent. Maybe I was doing this wrong. Maybe the lesson wasn't in withholding the house, but in letting Cassandra have it and face the natural consequences of selling it. Maybe watching her burn through the money and end up with nothing would teach her more than any lecture I could give. Or maybe I was just trying to justify taking the easy path, handing over the property and washing my hands of the outcome. I didn't know. God help me, I didn't know. I locked up the house as darkness fell and drove back to Savannah with my heart in turmoil. Friday, I called Evan Morrison. "I can't do this," I said. "I'm going to tell her the truth." There was a pause. About the house condition? About everything. What I heard her say. Why I'm concerned. I'll give her the property like Dad wanted, but I'm going to be honest about my fears and hope she proves me wrong. That's the right call, Douglas. Yeah, my voice cracked slightly. Doesn't make it easier. The right thing rarely is. Saturday morning dawned clear and cool, October in Georgia at its finest. Cassandra texted that she'd be at our house by 9. Patricia made coffee and pancakes nobody ate. I showered and dressed, my stomach churning. She arrived in her leased BMW, wearing designer sunglasses and carrying a Starbucks cup. "Ready to see this disaster?" she said with a laugh. The drive to Tybee was torture. Cassandra talked the whole way, about her friend Natasha's new condo, about a guy named Brett she'd been seeing, about how expensive everything in Atlanta was. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to find the right words. When we pulled into the driveway, she went quiet. "This is it?" she said. "This is it." She got out slowly, looking at the house. The morning light made the blue siding glow. A mockingbird sang from the magnolia tree. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and marsh grass. "It's smaller than I remembered," she said. We walked up to the porch. I unlocked the door and we stepped inside. Cassandra moved through the house in silence, touching things. The back of the sofa, the kitchen counter, the door frame where my father had marked my height each summer in pencil. She stopped in front of the photo wall. "I remember this," she said softly, pointing to a picture of herself at age 8, building a sandcastle. "Grandpa helped me make a moat. We used seaweed for decoration." "He saved that photo on his desk for 20 years, I said. She turned to look at me, something shifting in her face. "The lawyer said there were all these problems, code violations, structural issues. This was it. The moment of truth." I could continue the lie. Point out the old wiring, the settling foundation, the outdated septic system, let her walk away thinking she was dodging a burden. Or, "Cassandra, sit down. I need to tell you something." We sat on my father's sofa, the same sofa where he'd read her bedtime stories when she visited as a child. Outside, seagulls called. Inside, my heart hammered. "There's nothing seriously wrong with this house," I said. "The wiring is old, yes, the foundation has settled, but it's sound. It's worth every penny the market would pay, maybe more." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why did the lawyer—" "Because I asked him to emphasize the problems. I misled you, honey, and I'm sorry." The color drained from her face. "You what?" "After your grandfather's funeral, I was coming to tell you about this inheritance. I heard you on the phone with Whitney. I heard you talking about selling the house immediately, about spending the money on trips and cars and parties." She stood up abruptly. "You were eavesdropping?" "I was walking down the hallway in my own home. You weren't exactly whispering." "So you— What? You decided to trick me out of my inheritance?" "Out of what Grandpa wanted me to have." Her voice was rising, anger and hurt mixing together. "No, I decided—" I took a deep breath. "I decided I didn't want to enable you to destroy yourself, but I was wrong about the method. Lying to you, manipulating you. That's not who I am. That's not who your grandfather raised me to be." "Oh, so now you're taking the moral high ground after lying to me for a week?" "I'm taking responsibility for my mistake. Yes, I lied. I was wrong. But Cassandra, what you plan to do with this house? It's my house. Grandpa left it to me. I can do whatever I want with it." "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. "It is your house, your inheritance, your decision, and I'm going to sign the papers transferring it to you, exactly like Dad wanted." That seemed to catch her off guard. "You are?" "Yes, but first I need you to understand what you'd be selling." I stood and walked to the master bedroom. She followed reluctantly. I opened the closet and pulled out a cardboard box from the top shelf. "Your grandmother died in this room," I said. "Right there, on that bed. Heart attack, June 15th, 2003. Your grandfather was holding her hand. Her last words were, 'Take care of our boy.' She meant me. I was 53 years old and she was still worried about her son." I opened the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with ribbon. "Every week for 45 years, while your grandfather worked in Savannah during the winter, your grandmother stayed here and wrote him letters. Every single week, about what she'd seen on the beach, what she was reading, how much she loved him." Cassandra was very still. "He never threw away a single one," I continued. "After she died, he read one every night before bed for 17 years. That's how he said goodnight to her." I pulled out another box, this one filled with tools. "Your grandfather built this house with these tools, every board, every nail. He worked construction 6 days a week, then came here on Sundays and worked on this house. It took 2 years. Your grandmother packed sandwiches and lemonade and sat on the foundation with him while he worked, reading him passages from the Bible and telling him about her week. I walked to the kitchen and opened a drawer. Inside were shells, hundreds of them, sorted by type. Your grandmother collected these. She taught me their names. She taught you their names, too. Remember? You were 7. You told her you wanted to be a marine biologist." Cassandra's eyes were wet. "This isn't just a house," I said. "It's a marriage. It's a lifetime. It's every Sunday dinner, every Christmas morning, every summer vacation of my childhood. It's where I learned to be a man. It's where your mother and I fell in love. It's where you learned to walk, right there on that porch, holding your grandfather's fingers. I sat back down on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. So yes, it's your house. Legally, morally, in every way that matters, it's yours to do with as you wish. But I'm asking you, begging you to think about what you're really selling. Not square footage and market value, but history, love, legacy, the only thing your grandparents had left to give you. The silence stretched long. Cassandra stood in the middle of the living room, tears running down her face, looking around at the house with new eyes. Finally, she said, "I'm a mess, aren't I?" "You're not a mess, honey. You're just lost. 2 divorces, no career, no money, living in a studio apartment at 34. She laughed bitterly. "And my first thought when Grandpa died was how much I could get for his stuff." "Your first thought was grief," I said gently. "I saw you at the funeral. You loved him. But then She sat down next to me, crying harder now. "I thought about how everyone else has their life together, and I'm just screwing up over and over, and here was this chance to finally have something, to not be the family failure." "Oh, baby," I put my arm around her. "You're not a failure. You're my daughter, and I love you. But yes, you've been making some poor choices." "Some?" She wiped her eyes. "Dad, I'm a disaster." "Then stop being a disaster. It's not complicated. It's hard, but it's not complicated." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What would you do? With the house?" "Honestly? Yeah, I'd keep it. I'd spend weekends here. I'd sit on that porch and watch the sunrise like Grandma used to. I'd fix the things that need fixing. I'd invite your mother and me to visit. Maybe eventually I'd bring my own kids here, tell them stories about their great-grandparents." I paused. "But that's me. You have to decide what's right for you." Cassandra stood and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The pier my father built stretched out toward the marsh, weathered but solid. "I can't afford to keep it," she said finally. "The property taxes alone, and I live in Atlanta. I couldn't use it enough to justify. The taxes are about $4,000 a year. Your mother and I would cover them if you kept the house in the family, and there are ways to make it work. You could rent it out 9 months a year, come down for summers. You could move back to Savannah. There are jobs here, good jobs. I could grow up," she said quietly. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She turned to face me. "I heard what you didn't say, Dad. When Evan was talking about repairs and problems, you just sat there. You let me think this place was worthless. Because you knew I'd sell it the second I could." "Yes," I admitted. "I did know that, and I was terrified of watching you make that mistake. So you lied to protect me." "I lied because I was afraid. There's a difference." She came and sat next to me again. "I'm not going to sell it." My heart leaped, but I kept my voice steady. "You don't have to decide right now." "I'm not going to sell it," she repeated firmly. "Not because you guilt-tripped me or because I suddenly became a better person, but because I think I need this. I need something solid, something that isn't temporary or disposable, something that matters." "Cassandra, I'm going to move back to Savannah," she said, the words coming faster now. "I hate Atlanta anyway. It's expensive and fake, and everyone's just trying to out-Instagram each other. I'll find a job here, teaching maybe, or hospital administration, something real. I'll live in this house. I'll learn to fix the things Grandpa would have fixed. I'll become the kind of person who deserves to live in a house that means something." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. "That's a big decision to make in one morning," I said carefully. "I know, and maybe I'll screw it up. Probably I'll screw it up, at least at first. But Dad, I'm 34 years old. If I don't change now, I never will." She took my hand. "Will you help me? Not with money, I need to do this myself, but with figuring out how to be better?" I pulled her into a hug, this daughter who'd frustrated me and disappointed me and broken my heart 100 times. This daughter I loved more than my own life. "Of course I'll help you," I said. "That's what family does." We spent the rest of the day at the house. I showed her where the water shutoff was, how to reset the breaker box, which floorboards were loose. We walked on the beach and collected shells like we used to when she was small. We sat on the pier as the sun set and talked about her moving plans, about jobs she might apply for, about how to break her Atlanta lease. It might all fall apart tomorrow. She might change her mind next week. Old habits die hard, and Cassandra had a lot of old habits. But today, in this moment, she was trying. And that was enough. We drove back to Savannah as stars appeared over the marsh. Patricia was waiting on the porch, anxious and hopeful. Cassandra hugged her tight and whispered, "I'm coming home, Mom." That night, after Cassandra had driven back to Atlanta to start packing, Patricia and I sat in the living room with the lights off. "Do you think she'll really do it?" Patricia asked. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think she wants to, and that's a start." "You told her the truth?" "Yeah, that took courage." "No," I said. "Lying took cowardice. Truth was just getting back to who I'm supposed to be." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Your father would be proud." "Maybe. Or maybe he'd be shaking his head at how close I'd come to betraying everything he'd taught me, but I hoped he'd understand. Being a parent means walking a tightrope between protection and freedom, between love and tough love, between holding on and letting go. 3 months later, Cassandra moved into the beach house. She got a job as an administrative coordinator at Memorial Hospital in Savannah, making decent money with benefits. She painted the shutters, fixed the porch screens, and planted new flowers where her grandmother's garden used to be. She still makes mistakes. She still calls me for money sometimes, and sometimes I say yes, and sometimes I say no. She dated Brett for a while, then broke up with him when she realized he was just another distraction. She goes to First Baptist some Sundays, sits in the back, still figuring out what she believes. But she's trying. She's building something real. Last Sunday, we had dinner at the beach house. Me and Patricia, Cassandra, and a few of her new friends from work. We ate shrimp and grits on the porch while the sun set over the ocean. Someone told a funny story. Everyone laughed. For a moment, it felt like family again, like home. After dinner, Cassandra walked me to my truck. "Hey, thank you," she said, "for lying to me. I shouldn't have. No, I mean it. Thank you for caring enough to try to stop me from being an idiot. And thank you for caring enough to tell me the truth anyway." She smiled. "You raised me right, Dad. It just took me a while to remember." I hugged her tight. "I love you, baby girl. I love you too." I drove home through the marsh, past the places my father had shown me, past the landmarks of my life. The moon was full, reflecting off the water like a silver road leading home. My father taught me that character is tested in the impossible moments, that a man's word is his bond, that love sometimes means saying no. But he also taught me, maybe without meaning to, maybe just by example, that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we were wrong, choose truth over comfort, and trust the people we love to rise to the occasion. Cassandra had risen. Not perfectly, not permanently maybe. But today, this week, this season of her life, she had risen. And that was grace. Unexpected, undeserved, and absolutely sufficient. The house on Tybee Island stands solid, weathered but strong, built by my father's hands and held now in my daughter's keeping. It's not perfect. The paint still needs touching up. The pier needs new boards. The garden is still patchy. But it's home, it's family, it's legacy. And sometimes that's enough.